All right, so now that we've imported and made our motifs, I know you have two of them. One of them you had to paint by hand and one of them you're using this way. For expedience sake, I'm just going to show you how to do it with the exported or the extruded ones from the surface modifier in here. So we should have this, we should have a version of this, and we should have another version, and then we should have a game res version of the model, meaning that we have the same exact version of the cylinder before we did the textures to it, and I'll turn off the textures. So it's just the cylinder that we imported, in our case, from Max. Go back to Subtool. By the way, shortcuts for jumping up and down is the arrow keys. So you can go up and down by just pushing the arrow keys into these layers, or what they're called, our tools, and or Alt and clicking on whichever one you want. If it's visible, you can click on it. But they're both not visible there. So if I click on this right here, it'll change to the other version. But anyway, so we should have two versions, one here and let me hide this one, and one here. So these two. I have a third version for something else we'll talk about probably in the next class. But for now, that's it. We have our high res, we have our low res. We just need to get these things out of here and then go into Painter and do some dancing with some textures to get our textures out. So what we've done forever is we go into Z plugins and click on the export import buttons, and it has a bunch of settings and stuff. And some of these settings are cool if you need them for mapping purposes for masks, but I'm not planning on any masks for this one. So one of the things that I did do before I did this, that's right, let me see, is I decimated this. And in case you don't know what decimation is, let me see what I have a high res one. Let me save this one. Yeah, and this one's 2.8 million. Okay, one of the things I did on the previous version, which I'm not going to go back and fight with, is I cleaned up this. It's really really low res looking, and it also had some weird stuff in it. And I guess I'll show you real quick how I did it. Rather than change the texture, which I ended up doing anyway, because this is all because of the texture. All I did is I up-resed it. So if I look at it, I go to, so it's the standard size we were just talking about, and I go up to, I think I went to 1500. I think this only goes up to 4000. So I did this only for this reason, because I wanted to clean up this mess. So I came in here real quick, and it's going to be 2.263 million polys, or tries actually, verts. So now it's higher, and why did I do that? It did clean up a little bit also for me, but it also allowed me to do something like clay polish and do the clay polish on it, and therefore it cleaned it up a bit for me. And now if I zoom back out and deselect, you can see that it's a little cleaner, it's softer, it's not perfect by any means, but again, this isn't for a client at all. So I did that, but the problem with it is it's 2.26 million, which really isn't horrible, but this is a good example of showing you how to use decimation. So over in the plugins, and again, if you don't have your plugins up, all you have to do is go to the top menu up here and say plugins and click on the little circle, and it goes to the left-hand side. And we're going to come down to decimation master. And right here, I'm going to say pre-process current. And what it'll do is it's going to analyze my mesh and process the basically the method of how they're going to do it, and it's not really planning for it, but it's calculating everything in every vert. And then after I do that, which is the longest process of this, I have to then tell it how big, percentage-wise, I want it compared to how big it is now. It's really cool for hard surface objects because it's all tries. It just makes them all tries. It's not great for characters, but it's a good starting vehicle for characters. And if we did characters more, we'd talk about that. But it's almost there. The cool thing is you can do this once and change the decimation percentage as many times as you want, and it's fast after this point. You could also click any of these buttons down here, which you want it to be, and that basically does both things. So the second thing you do after you do this is after you pre-process, you come to decimate current. And I have it set to 10,000, so, or 10%, so it would be 226,000, I think. So let's try decimate current. Yeah, 226,000 now. The one thing I want you to do is look at the difference between this one and that one. This is the higher res, 2 million, and then decimate current. And I see nothing different. Decimation's awesome, but it also does this to your mesh. This is why I think computers think we're crazy. I'm like, why would you ever build anything the way you do when this is the efficient way? But anyway, and this brought it down to a reasonable level. So that's what you were looking at a second ago, and that's what I did, and the reason it was at 220. I think I even brought it lower. Let me pull that one back up just because I kind of have it set up. Actually, I brought it to 400, so it's a little bit higher. I think I went up to 4 million and then brought it back down. And by the way, the more polygons you have or tries you have or whatever, the longer the pre-process takes. So I could even come in here again and do it again. And you can see it's quite a bit faster. And then I can go down to, let's say, I only want 50% of it because I want it to be like the other one. And then I just hit decimate current, and it's done. And there's, you know, barely a noticeable difference. Okay, so now I have that set up. Now I need to go into the subtools, and I have the GameRes Tech version and this one. And like I said before, ZBrush scales things kind of funny sometimes, and there's ways to fix the scale and make them, and there's a calculation number, but that's something else we can go into. That is, you know, I'm not gonna fight with the mathematicians on it. This is much easier for my use. So when I started doing this, like I talked about, you made a second one for the GameRes. Now we're just going to export them both because we know they line up perfectly. So I'm going to come in here, and the way I've always done it, because they didn't have the export, you weren't allowed to export FBXs out of here, is I'm going to come in here and say export with the selection, the one I have selected. And you can see I have it set to selected. That's default, I'm pretty sure. And then I say export, and then I'm going to save it to here, high res extrude. So the old one. ZBrush will do this and act like it's done right here, but it's not till you see that pop up that it's really done. Obviously, the more polys you have, or the higher res it is, the longer it's gonna take. So I'll do this again, and I'll go to GameRes, and it's done. So now we're done. We're done in ZBrush. You would do 3 of them. You only need one of these, the GameRes versions, but the sculpted, hand sculpted ones you want, and then you want the high res sculpted ones. And then you're going to come into Painter at this point. I'm going to show you on Wednesday, maybe even today, how to get a normal out of Substance Designer, because we're not actually going to use the normal part of it, but we can bake it and get our height map out of it, which works pretty good for an alpha, actually. So I'm going to go pick my new GameRes one right here. I'm going to leave it 2048, that's probably fine for this. Discard. And then the first thing we do, and every time we work in ZBrush, or I'm sorry, in Painter, is bake. So we're going to change our bake to 4096 or 2048, whatever one you want. I always go higher than the final resolution, just so I have it if I need to go up it later. Otherwise I have to rebake it, which isn't a horrible thing, but anyway. So, and then I need to make sure I point out to the high res mesh, open, and then I make sure all these are set up and say bake. Now the other thing is at least ZBrush kept our UVs all set up. It doesn't keep UVs set up for multi-UVs. It does have a problem with that, but for our purposes it's perfect. It's one UV set, so when we import it in, it doesn't break it. And now we've got this set up. At this point, what I want you all to do is, first off, we'll get rid of this layer, is really essentially break this out. You know, I want this, only this information. I just want this and maybe the AO. But what I'll do real quick is add a fill layer, and then I'm going to and turn off base color, normal, height, I'm sorry, not normal, metal, and rough. And I'll leave rough on. I'm going to turn the rough way up so it's not shiny at all, so it's a rougher texture object. And then I'm going to come into the normal setting, and I'm going to grab the normal out of my project. And in case you don't know how to find that, I'm going to close this up, open it back up, and this is where you'll find stuff. By default, whatever you have in this drop-down is what's going to show up. So by default, you should be like this. What you want to do is go to All Libraries and go to Projects, and then this should show you the ones they just baked. I'm going to take this normal map and I'm going to throw it on there. Okay. This just makes it a little bit more intense, so I can turn it down in the engine, I can turn it down anywhere I want, but at least I have more information. The old way of doing this is to take your normal that you bake out of here into Photoshop and putting a duplicate layer above it, and putting the layer above it set to overlay. And then the overlay will work fine. It does the same thing. It just intensifies the actual texture. So then I'm going to export. I'm just going to go Control-Shift-E for export. I'm going to look at this. And let's stop right here real quick. First thing you always have to remember, we've talked about before, is make sure you have this set up, because by default it wants to go to some place. I'm going to go to 3. I'm going to make a new folder called Class Textures. Go back and clean up the stuff I was doing before. I'm going to say select folder. Now the next thing you want to decide is what kind of engine you're going to put it for. So we're going to put it out for Unreal first. And I have a set one here called Unreal 4 Engine Pack. They don't have a 5 yet, or they might actually, there's an update, but right now I'm using the last update. So Unreal 4 Packed, and if I click on that, it will set that up, and it's going to use the output texture, so I set it to, so it's 2048, and then it's going to use that information right there, I'm sorry, and then the file type is going to be ping, because that's what it defaults to, and dilation is the outside of the UVs, what it bakes to, so we're going to leave that at default for now, infinite. That's why you see those stripes in the textures. One other thing we can do is come in here and check, and we can see what it's going to bake out. It's going to bake out based off the name of this object, by the way. Let me say this. If you want to change the name of this, it's up here. This is actually the name, so I could change this to anything I want, and then when I export, it'll match that name. Okay. So if I come back in here, I go to Game Res, and I look, it says Base, which is going to be your color map. It says ORM, which I'll explain in a minute. It says Normal, I have an Emissive, and I have a Curvature. The curvature is new for, not new for Unreal. It's not usually used, but I use it for Unreal. And then emissive is just the glow texture, the self-illumination stuff. It's not going to really do anything. This one won't show up, and you get an error, but that's fine. It's just error saying it didn't bake that because there is no emissive texture. So they make sure it's still set to the right place, and then we say export, and then you'll see. I guess it used to say error, now it just doesn't do it, which is cool, because people used to panic when they saw the error. And then one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to Unity HDRP, and I'm going to come in here, and the only thing I really want in here is the mask map. Actually, I'll do these too. Okay. Alright, so let's go look at those in Photoshop first. This one. File, open. We're going to open up the mask, we're going to open up the ORM, we're going to open up the normal and the roughness in the middle. Not the normal, sorry, the AO, the roughness in the middle. Okay. So here's the ORM. This is what it's been put out by for Unreal. And then here is the mask map, which is what they put out for Unity. So both of these textures are actually a combination of other textures. What textures? It's easier to see this off the bat instead of, because it's a ping, the alpha is built into the actual texture. which I'll show you how to get rid of in a second. But if we go to the channels here, we can see there's a red, blue, green. And in the red channel is going to be our AO. So if I come up and look at our AO, it should be exactly the same as the red channel in this one right here. So all this is doing is splitting 3 textures into 3 different pieces. So if I go to the green channel, it's all white. I go to the roughness channel, it's all white. I go to the blue channel, and it's all black, and that's because the metal is all black. There's no metal, and it's really rough. So it's more rough than it isn't, and then of course the AO. So what's the difference between that and a mask map? A mask map for Unity is if I open it up and say, first I got to get rid of the alpha here. So if I come in here and I say layer mask from transparency, and I just grab it, and then I copy it, and then make a new layer, create, paste it, and weirdly, this mask map didn't work for crap. Huh. Well, a mask map in Unity. Oh, I don't. What did I just do that to? Did it something else? Okay. So if I take this and I cut it, so I'll go to mask map and say cut, and then go to new channel and say enter and paste, and then I come back to here. Oops, one thing I did wrong there. Oh, I made a new channel. That's why. Control Shift and not Control N. That's what I'm doing. I'm making new Photoshop files, and then paste, and then I come back to here and I say delete layer mask, and I turn this off. I've now got it closer to what I think it should look like. If I copy this again, and then I can just delete this actually. So in Unity, the red channel is the roughness. The green channel is the AO, the blue channel is for details, which we aren't using at this point, and then our alpha channel is our metal map. So if I press paste, it's just black anyway. But it's the same thing, right? It's just 3, it's using 4 channels instead of 3, and because it uses all 4, it looks like it's transparent in a lot of cases, so there's a lot of transparency, but it's doing the same thing. It's taking the information from those 3 channels, those 4 channels, like the ORM is only using 3, and it's putting our roughness, our metal, and our AO into separate channels. That way it's cheaper. It's a cheaper way of doing stuff. We've been doing this for a while. So that's what we're doing there, and that's why they look different, is because they're just different order, basically, but they're the same information. So we'll close this one, and I don't need to save it. And that's what it looks like. The other thing that's weird about Unity is Unity doesn't use roughness, it uses smoothness. So if 1 is white and 0 is black, so 100% smoothness is white and 0% smoothness is black, then when you say I want it to be really rough, you say 100%, you say 0 smoothness, because it's not smooth, it's rough, so it's the opposite of smooth. And if you say I want it in with roughness maps, like in Unreal, it's going to be the opposite. So if I want it to be really rough, then I say 100%, so white. And if I want it to be smooth, I say 0%, so it's black. So 0, 1, just think of positive, negative, on, off, basically. That's what those whites and blacks mean. And depending on the word they're using, it's going to be opposite. So smoother it is, the whiter it is, the rougher it is, the blacker it is in Unity. And the smoother it is, the blacker it is, and the whiter it is, or I mean the rougher it is, the whiter it is in roughness. So that's what you're seeing there. And then here's our metal, which is the same too. So is this that? So when you see these weird name things, go check them, because you'll find that there are 3 different textures just compressed into one. You can do that with a bunch of stuff. Anyway, so that's what we did first, and then the other thing you need to do is come in here and bake just some basic stone textures. I'm not going to say how you have to do it. You can hack it together. You can download something and see if you make your own. You can do it in Substance Designer if you want, but we want a base stone material. And what you do want to do before you do that is save this. So I'm going to come in here and save this, and I'm going to say week 3. Nope, I'm going to say cross texture. Turns and put it in here. And so basically what you're going to do is you're going to come back in here. The way I would do it is I would come back in here, I would bake mesh map, turn off the high res one, and just bake. And select the textures and it'll just be a simple cylinder. You still want to bake because it tells it up and down, right and left. And if you make something in here, and since this is 100% the UVs go edge to edge, then it's going to be fine. So if we looked at the UVs, you can see it's 0 to 0 all the way up. So if I go out and do something, I can just fake one here. You can do, this is probably a good thing for you to see anyway. If I come here and I go like, let's do this one. Put it in there, and then I'm going to go maybe concrete on top. And then take this one out. Maybe like a normal overlay thing. And then maybe what I'll do is concrete 2. And this one I will do, probably put the color on top up here. And again, I can change this color to whatever I need it to be, a little bit darker. And like that. And then I grab this concrete dusty and do something like a multiply so it's a little bit darker. Let's see if we're getting anything out of this. And it's just giving me this random dirt-esque thing going on. This one I may want to pull off some of the normal stuff too. By the way, right now this is normal and it's only affecting the base color. If I came in here and went to the normal height and then I changed this here, it would turn it down. So I can go like 50% just for the sake of getting that other stuff through here. And then I can also come back up to base color and tell it to be multiply 2. Maybe I want it to be dirt, maybe that's too dirty. Come back in and do, you know, something a little grayer. Turn down the strength of this. And then if you export this out, now you'll have a standard stone material. So export this and it'll tile. As long as your unwrap was tiled, then it should tile fine. We want to change the other thing I do before I do these things. So I do these all in the same place because that way I have them all together. And they're already baked in here and everything. So I would change this to base. Sure. And say OK. Or actually, let's not even say base texture. Let's say base stone. Okay, export. Check it. I think it's still set to Unity. We really just want a Unreal version for now. Export. And come back into Photoshop. Just open that last one up real quick. Open. Cross texture, I just want to show that base. Oh, that's on. Open. Base stone. There we go. And we'll check our tiling. Have a preview. There it is. I mean, obviously it's tiling that size, but you're really going to hopefully it's this big, and then we're doing other stuff to make it better anyway. All right, so that's where we're going to stop.